December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m. The Ardennes forest. You can almost hear it before you see it, the low, rolling thunder not of weather but of steel. Artillery shells tear through the frozen darkness, ripping open pine forests that have slept undisturbed for centuries. Snow jumps from the ground in white bursts. Telephone lines snap. Radios crackle, then go dead. In foxholes along the thin American line, men of the 99th Infantry Division jerk awake as the earth convulses beneath them. Some are still pulling on boots when the first German shells land. Others never get the chance. A private presses his helmet tighter against his head as the sky turns orange. He has been told this sector is quiet, a rest area, a place to recover before the war's final push into Germany. That lie dies in the first 10 minutes. Across the front from Monschau to Echternach, the largest German offensive in the West erupts without warning. More than 200,000 men surge forward, Volksgrenadiers, Fallschirmjäger, Panzer divisions held in reserve for months. Panthers and Tigers grind down icy roads, their engines echoing through valleys filled with fog. This isn't a raid. It's a full-scale gamble. By dawn, American positions are collapsing in pockets. Roadblocks vanish under armor. Isolated platoons fight until ammunition runs dry. Messengers ski through snowstorms carrying handwritten orders because the radios are gone. Entire battalions are swallowed by the forest. And at first, no one understands what they're looking at. At Allied headquarters in Versailles, the morning brief begins like any other. Coffee steams. Maps lie flat and orderly. Staff officers murmur as reports trickle in, confused, contradictory, incomplete. Enemy patrols increased. Localized attack. Possibly a diversion. General Omar Bradley frowns. His 12th Army Group holds the Ardennes sector lightly. That was the point. The terrain is rough, the roads narrow, the weather miserable. Intelligence has insisted the Germans are finished, out of fuel, out of men, out of options. The reports keep coming. German armor sighted near Lochem Gap. American regiments cut off near Schnee Eifel. Heavy artillery concentrations, far heavier than expected. Bradley looks at the map again. Something doesn't fit. But it's Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAEF, where the air feels different, tighter, quieter. General Dwight David Eisenhower stands over a wall map, hands clasped behind his back. He does not pace. He does not shout. He listens. The pins on the map begin to shift. Red arrows appear where no arrows should be. Eisenhower has spent years learning how Germans think when they are desperate. He remembers 1918. He remembers how nations behave when the end is near, not cautiously but recklessly, when pride outweighs probability. A staff officer points to the Ardennes. "Sir, this can't be their main effort, the terrain." "I know the terrain," Eisenhower says quietly. Another officer suggests the attack might be designed to draw Allied reserves south, away from the Roer River. A feint, a final flourish before collapse. Eisenhower doesn't answer right away. Outside, snow begins to fall in thick, heavy sheets. The same snow grounding Allied aircraft. The same snow blinding reconnaissance planes. The same snow that gives German armor the one thing it needs most. Time. He studies the German axis of advance. The direction isn't random. It isn't emotional. It's precise. Toward the Meuse River. Toward Antwerp. And suddenly, Eisenhower sees it. Not just what the Germans are doing, but what they're trying to break. If the Germans reach Antwerp, the Allied front splits in half. British forces to the north, Americans to the south. Supply lines severed. Political chaos unleashed across the coalition. It's audacious, almost insane. And that's why it might work. Hitler isn't trying to win the war. He's trying to shatter the alliance holding it together. Eisenhower straightens. His voice is calm, but something in the room changes. "This is their last card," he says. Some officers exchange glances. Last card or final bluff? Eisenhower shakes his head slowly. No, this isn't a bluff. He's betting everything. The realization lands like a weight. If Eisenhower is right, this isn't a breakthrough to be sealed. It's a crisis to be absorbed, a punch meant to knock the Allies unconscious in one blow. And that means the response cannot be cautious. Phones begin ringing. Orders start moving, not down but outward. Eisenhower doesn't rush reinforcements blindly into the breach. He doesn't panic. He stabilizes. "Let them come," he tells his commanders. "We will fight them where they choose to advance." To some, it sounds insane. American lines are folding. Towns like St. Vith and Clervaux are already under pressure. Bastogne sits at the crossroads like a loaded gun. But Eisenhower understands something critical. German fuel stocks are limited. Their supply columns are fragile. Their timetable is merciless. Every mile forward costs them something they cannot replace. Every hour matters. And if the Allies can bend without breaking, if they can hold long enough, the spearhead will dull itself. Still, the gamble cuts both ways. If Eisenhower is wrong, the road to the Meuse lies open. If he hesitates now, there may not be time to recover. He looks again at the map, at the snow-covered forest swallowing entire divisions. Then he gives the order that will define the battle. The order leaves Eisenhower's mouth without drama. No raised voice, no theatrical pause. Patton will turn north. For a moment the room is silent. General George S. Patton's Third Army is driving east, hard, deep into Germany's Saar region. Its momentum is a weapon, one Eisenhower has allowed Patton to wield with minimal restraint. To pivot that entire army in winter, across icy roads clogged with refugees and retreating units, sounds impossible. Bradley blinks. "North, sir." Eisenhower nods. He's already thinking about it. And he's right. 3 days earlier, December 12th, Patton had sat in a command tent in Luxembourg as rain lashed the canvas. He had felt it, not in reports or intelligence summaries, but in instinct. The German quiet wasn't exhaustion, it was inhalation. He had ordered contingency plans drawn up, not 1, 3. Now, as Eisenhower's message reaches him, Patton doesn't ask if it can be done. He asks how soon. 48 hours, Patton says, 72 at most. Bradley nearly chokes when he hears it. Eisenhower doesn't smile, but something in his eyes hardens with resolve. Do it. Across the front, American units fight in isolation. At Lanzerath Ridge, a single platoon of the 99th Infantry holds up an entire German regiment for hours, killing time the Germans cannot afford. At St. Vith, engineers blow bridges while infantry fight house to house. At Clervaux, men die buying minutes. Minutes Eisenhower needs. In Bastogne, the 101st Airborne arrives just as German armor begins to encircle the town. Snow blankets the crossroads. Trucks skid. Paratroopers dig foxholes in frozen ground with bayonets and bare hands. They are told only one thing: hold. Eisenhower's strategy is brutally simple. He will not rush reinforcements into the German breakthrough piecemeal. He will let the bulge form, wide, heavy, overextended. Then he will cut it off. To do that, he needs time. He needs weather. He needs stubborn men in the wrong places refusing to move. And above all, he needs Patton. Patton's columns begin turning north on December 19th. Thousands of vehicles, tanks, half-tracks, fuel trucks, artillery, pivot in a coordinated maneuver that has never been attempted in combat. Traffic jams stretch for miles. Military police stand in the snow directing convoys with glowing batons. Engines freeze. Men sleep sitting up. Drivers navigate by compass when signs disappear under snowdrifts. Still the columns move. Hitler, meanwhile, grows impatient. His generals warn him the timetable is slipping, fuel is running low, American resistance is stiffer than expected, Bastogne hasn't fallen. Hitler rages. He demands speed, he demands obedience, he demands Antwerp. But Eisenhower has already taken the measure of the gamble. Every German unit pushing west is a unit not defending the Rhine. Every gallon of fuel burned in the Ardennes will never be replaced. And when the skies finally clear, December 23rd, the clouds break. Sunlight cuts through the gray like a blade. Allied aircraft roar back into the sky, thunderbolts, Mustangs, typhoons, diving on German columns trapped on narrow roads. Trucks explode, tanks burn, fuel dumps vanish in pillars of smoke. The gamble begins to unravel. Still, it isn't over. Bastogne is surrounded. German armor presses in. Patton is racing north through snow and ice, his lead elements hours from contact. Eisenhower watches the map. If Patton arrives in time, the bulge will snap shut. If he doesn't, the war's ending will look very different. December 26, 1944. Just after noon. Outside Bastogne. The sound reaches the foxholes before the men see anything at all. A low, steady rumble, not artillery, not engines idling in panic. This sound is moving, confident, deliberate. It grows louder, closer, until someone shouts the words men have been afraid to hope for. Tanks, American tanks. From the south, through snow-choked roads and shattered villages, the lead elements of the 4th Armored Division push forward. Their Shermans break through German roadblocks, guns firing at point-blank range. Infantry clings to the tanks, faces raw from cold and exhaustion. At 4:50 p.m., a Sherman named Cobra King smashes through the final German line near Eisenhower and links up with the 101st Airborne. The siege of Bastogne is broken. Eisenhower receives the news in a quiet room far from the front. He allows himself no celebration, only a nod. The first hinge of the German offensive has snapped. But he knows better than anyone. The battle is not won at Bastogne. Now comes the counterstroke. As Patton's forces drive north, British and American units to the north of the Bulge begin pushing south. The weather remains clear. Allied aircraft hunt without mercy. German supply columns are shredded before they reach the front. Panthers sit abandoned, empty of fuel, their crews vanished into the forests. German commanders report units at half strength, then a third, then less. Hitler orders attacks to continue. He forbids retreat. Eisenhower, by contrast, allows flexibility. Units shift, lines bend, pressure increases. The Bulge begins to collapse inward. In early January, temperatures drop again. Frostbite claims as many men as bullets. The forest becomes a graveyard of frozen equipment and bodies half buried in snow. American artillery fires around the clock. Shells walk methodically through German positions. Infantry advances yard by yard, clearing villages whose names will never matter again, except to the men who bled there. On January 8th, the German High Command finally admits the truth. The offensive has failed. When Eisenhower meets with his senior commanders days later, the mood is sober but resolute. The Germans have lost irreplaceable armor, fuel, and veteran troops. The Western Front is restored, but now the balance has shifted decisively. Hitler has played his last card and lost. Eisenhower will later say the Ardennes tested not just armies but leadership itself. Panic would have been easy, overreaction tempting. Instead, he chose patience, calculation, trust in time and logistics. The war in the West will end 4 months later. But in the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the outcome was already sealed the moment Eisenhower understood the gamble and refused to flinch. The order leaves Eisenhower's mouth without drama. No raised voice. No theatrical pause. Patton will turn north. For a moment, no one speaks. George S. Patton's Third Army is driving east, fast and aggressive, smashing through the Saar toward Germany's industrial heartland. Its momentum is deliberate, cultivated. Patton has been unleashed for a reason. To halt that advance in winter, pivot it 90 degrees, and send it racing through snow-choked roads sounds reckless to the men in the room. General Omar Bradley breaks the silence. "North, sir." Eisenhower nods once. He's already thinking about it. And that is the key. 4 days earlier, December 12th, Patton had been sitting in a drafty command tent near Luxembourg. Rain beat against the canvas. The front was quiet, too quiet. Patton didn't trust it. He never had. He called his staff in and ordered contingency plans. Not one, 3. One if the Germans attacked north. One if they attacked south. One if they did the unthinkable and struck through the Ardennes. When Eisenhower's message reaches him on December 19th, Patton doesn't ask if it can be done. He asks, "When do you want me there?" "Soon as possible," Eisenhower replies. Patton's answer is immediate: 48 hours, 72 at most. At Bradley's headquarters, jaws drop. Entire corps do not turn on a dime. Not in winter. Not with thousands of vehicles, artillery pieces, fuel trucks, and supply columns stretched across icy roads. Eisenhower doesn't hesitate. Proceed. Across the Ardennes, American units are already buying time with blood. At Lanzerath Ridge, a single intelligence and reconnaissance platoon from the 99th Infantry Division pins down a full German regiment for nearly a day. In St. Vith, battered units fight street by street, delaying armored columns hour by hour. Engineers blow bridges as German shells walk closer. These are not glorious stands, they are desperate ones. But Eisenhower understands their value. Every delay stretches German supply lines. Every pause burns fuel the Germans cannot replace. Every mile forward tightens the noose. In Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division arrives just as German armor closes in. Snow blankets the crossroads town. Trucks skid. Men jump out still fastening chin straps. They dig foxholes in ground so frozen their shovels bounce. They are told nothing about grand strategy. Only one word: hold. When a German officer later demands surrender, the American reply is a single sentence: defiant, perfect. Nuts. Eisenhower's strategy is now fully formed. He will not rush forces blindly into the breakthrough. That would play directly into Hitler's hands. Instead, he allows the bulge to grow, wide, heavy, overextended. He lets German armor surge forward into a pocket that demands constant fuel, constant reinforcement, constant luck. Things the Reich no longer possesses. What Eisenhower needs is time. Time for weather to clear. Time for Patton to move. Time for Allied air power to return. And time is exactly what the German timetable cannot afford. On December 19th, Patton's army begins the turn. Columns of tanks and trucks pivot north in freezing darkness. Military police stand in the snow directing traffic with glowing batons. Engines seize in the cold. Drivers navigate by compass when road signs disappear beneath drifts. Men sleep in their vehicles. Some don't sleep at all. The movement is unprecedented. An entire army changing direction under combat conditions. Yet it works. Mile by mile, Patton's spearhead claws toward Bastogne. Hitler, meanwhile, grows furious. Reports tell him Bastogne still holds. Fuel shortages worsen. American resistance stiffens instead of collapsing. He screams at his generals, demands speed, forbids retreat. He does not see what Eisenhower sees. This is no longer an Allied emergency. It is a German trap closing from both sides. And when the skis finally clear, Eisenhower knows the balance will shift forever. That moment is coming, and it is closer than anyone at German headquarters realizes. December 26, 1944. Late afternoon. Outside Bastogne. The sound reaches the American lines first. A low, steady rumble rolling through the frozen air, not the chaotic crash of artillery, but something heavier, purposeful. Men in foxholes lift their heads. Someone squints down the snow-covered road to the south. Tanks, a voice says quietly. Then louder, American tanks. Through drifting snow and shattered trees, the lead elements of the 4th Armored Division break into view. Shermans grind forward, hulls scarred, antennas whipping in the wind. Infantrymen ride the decks, gripping whatever they can, faces blackened with oil and exhaustion. At 4:50 p.m., a tank named Cobra King smashes through the final German roadblock near Eisenhower. Moments later, it links up with paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division. The siege of Bastogne is over. Inside Bastogne, men who haven't slept properly in days stare in disbelief. Some laugh, some cry, some just sit down in the snow, suddenly unsure what to do now that the pressure has lifted. For Eisenhower, there is no celebration, only confirmation. The German timetable has cracked. Bastogne was never the prize, it was the fulcrum. With the corridor open, American forces begin pouring in fuel, ammunition, reinforcements. Patton's Third Army pushes north harder now, its momentum restored and sharpened. To the north of the Bulge, British and American units finally begin their drive south. The trap closes. The weather which once protected the German advance now condemns it. Skies clear. Allied air power returns in overwhelming force. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs sweep low over the Ardennes, hunting anything that moves. German columns packed onto narrow forest roads have nowhere to hide. Fuel trucks explode. Half-tracks burn. Panthers sit abandoned where they stalled, their crews gone, engines dry. What Hitler demanded, speed, becomes impossible. German commanders report the truth in fragments. Units at half strength. Ammunition nearly gone. Fuel measured in kilometers, not hours. Hitler refuses to listen. He orders attacks to continue. Retreat is forbidden. Eisenhower gives no such orders. American commanders are allowed to maneuver, to pull back when necessary, to strike when opportunity appears. Artillery pounds German positions day and night, methodical and relentless. Infantry advances yard by yard, clearing villages reduced to rubble and frost. The Bulge begins to shrink. By early January, the Ardennes is a frozen graveyard. Men freeze to death in foxholes. Weapons jam. Wounded soldiers lie too long in the snow. Entire German battalions simply vanish, captured, destroyed, or scattered beyond recovery. On January 8, 1945, German headquarters finally admits what Eisenhower understood weeks earlier. The offensive has failed. When Eisenhower meets his senior commanders, there is no triumph in his voice, only resolve. The Germans have burned through their last reserves, tanks, fuel, veteran crews. The Western Front is restored, but now it is unbalanced. The initiative is gone forever. Hitler's final gamble has ended in catastrophe. The war in the West will continue for 4 more months. Men will still die crossing rivers and clearing cities. But in the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the outcome was already decided the moment Eisenhower recognized the gamble and chose patience over panic. That choice didn't just save the front. It ended Germany's last chance to change the war. January 1945. The Ardennes. The forest is quiet again, but it is not the quiet of peace. Snow lies over burned-out tanks and splintered trees. Half-tracks sit frozen in place, doors open, as if their crews simply stepped out and never came back. The smell of cordite and diesel still hangs in the cold air weeks after the guns have moved on. American soldiers walk past the wreckage in silence. They don't cheer. They don't talk much at all. They understand what this place took. For Eisenhower, the battle does not end with victory reports or restored front lines. It ends in ledgers, losses counted, divisions rebuilt, replacements rushed forward. The Ardennes has cost the Allies nearly 90,000 casualties. The Germans have lost even more: men they cannot replace, tanks they cannot rebuild, fuel they no longer possess. But the true cost is invisible. The German army has spent its last strategic reserve. Inside the Reich, the consequences are immediate. Panzer divisions that once terrified Europe now exist only on paper. Luftwaffe squadrons lack fuel to train, let alone fight. New recruits, boys and old men, are rushed to the front with weeks of instruction and almost no heavy weapons. When the Allies launch their final offensives toward the Rhine, there is nothing left to stop them. Eisenhower knows this. He does not say it publicly. He doesn't need to. His orders grow colder, more deliberate. The war is no longer about reacting. It is about finishing. In private moments, Eisenhower reflects on December, on how close the front came to chaos, on how easily panic could have spread, how a different decision, a rushed counterattack, a misread intention could have turned a German gamble into a temporary miracle. Leadership, he believes, is not brilliance under perfect conditions. It is restraint under pressure. Years later, historians will argue over tactics, over Bastogne, over Patton, over whether the Ardennes was genius or desperation. But Eisenhower's realization stands apart from all of it. He understood that Hitler was not attacking from strength, but from collapse. And instead of flinching, he let the blow land, absorbed it, and watched the enemy exhaust himself. When Allied troops cross the Rhine in March, they encounter scattered resistance. When they push into the heart of Germany, entire units surrender without fighting. The end comes faster than anyone at SHAEF expected. And when Germany finally collapses in May 1945, the shape of that ending can be traced back to a frozen forest in December, to the moment when the Germans struck, and Eisenhower realized what it truly was. Not a comeback. A last desperate gamble, spring 1945. Somewhere in Germany, the roads are no longer clogged with enemy armor. They are filled with prisoners, long columns of German soldiers marching west under gray skis, rifles slung upside down, helmets dangling from tired hands. There is no defiance left in them, only relief that it is finally over. Eisenhower watches one such column pass in silence. This is what collapse looks like. In the months since the Ardennes, the war has accelerated toward its conclusion with frightening speed. The Rhine, once spoken of as an unbreakable barrier, has been crossed. Cities fall in days instead of weeks. Entire German formations surrender without a fight. What the Allies face now is not resistance, but disintegration. Eisenhower knows exactly when this became inevitable. December 1944. The Ardennes was never Germany's chance to win the war. It was its chance to delay the end. Hitler had believed that shock could replace strength, that audacity could substitute for fuel, that fear could fracture Allied unity where bombs and bullets no longer could. Eisenhower saw through it. He understood something few commanders ever truly grasp in the moment, that the enemy's most violent move can also be their confession of weakness. And once that is recognized, the correct response is not panic. It is patience. There were voices urging caution, others urging reckless counterattack. Political pressure mounted as newspapers warned of disaster and Allied civilians questioned how such a breakthrough had been possible at all. Eisenhower absorbed it all. He did not chase headlines. He did not seek glory. He did not demand immediate revenge. He played the long game. He let the enemy overreach. When the final accounting is done, historians will write about Patton's turn north, about Bastonia's defiance, about the snow, the cold, the air power, the tanks. All of it matters, but none of it works without the moment that came first. The moment when Eisenhower stood over a map, red arrows creeping westward, and chose not to react emotionally, but strategically. That decision did not just save the Western Front. It sealed Germany's fate. In May 1945, as the war in Europe officially ends, Eisenhower sends a final message to Allied forces. It is restrained, professional, almost understated. That is his style. He knows the truth doesn't need decoration. The last German gamble failed not because it lacked courage, but because it faced leadership that understood when to hold, when to bend, and when to let an enemy destroy himself. The Ardennes is quiet now. The forests have grown back. The roads are empty. Snow still falls there in winter, just as it did in 1944. But the outcome of the war was decided in that cold silence, when one man recognized desperation masquerading as strength, and refused to blink. And